Welcome back to our post-show discussion. We're back with some of our education experts. Colin Hanna, who's president of Let Freedom Ring, a conservative group that encourages Americans to read the Constitution. Ron Packard, founder of the biggest provider of online education, and Rose Fernandez, whose kids are taught by his schools. So, who has a question?
I have a question, Mr. Packard. Briefly, it's a two-part question. Number one, are you required by the government to offer the same courses that you teach now in Spanish as well as English? And secondly, how do you prevent pupils from cheating?
All right, the first question, we generally have to comply with all the state regulations regarding ESL or ELL. So our curriculum is
English as a second language.
Or English language learners. And so we comply with those rules. Our curriculum is English-based right now. And the nice thing about online learning, a lot of people who are not proficient in English can actually read English pretty well. So because a lot of it is visual, we actually do pretty well with ELL learners. The second part of your question around cheating, it's not that different than even in a brick-and-mortar school where kids are working on a daily basis and we're testing mastery, not necessarily for grading or assessment. The only way to truly protect against cheating is have proctored exams. And all of our children take the state examinations in proctored settings, and we also, because our teachers are scattered around the state, they can visit face-to-face and go through work samples with the students and make sure what we're seeing in the online assessments matches the performance they see when they're in person.
Yes, sir.
I think I've heard a thread of how bad the unions have been for the fabric of this country in education, too, not just in business. And one thing I haven't heard today is the U.S. Department of Education could just be scrapped and scuttled and their $200 billion budget put to work somewhere else. I'm just curious about if anybody has any ideas about that or thoughts on it.
I'm for that, but I mean, education has always been something paid for state by state. Why do we need a big, fat, clumsy federal $200 million education department? The Constitution doesn't say anything about an education department. They're supposed to provide for well, that's your thing.
That's
common
right.
justice. But I defer to the experts here.
There was a bill that did not ultimately make it to the floor and didn't get voted on called Dollars to the Classroom, which was to provide that all federal spending would produce 90% of the total dollars in a bill at the classroom level. That would have had the functional equivalent of reducing the size of the education department, because if you're going to send 90% of the money to the classroom, there's less left to run the bureaucracy.
Who's next here? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'd like to know, how do you compare in your academic program as far as your program as to public schools?
Sure. The way we designed our curriculum to meet or exceed the standards of all 50 states. It was designed to be rigorous, equivalent to what the nation's very best private or public schools do, and I think the families who go through it as students would say that it absolutely is. And
well, let me ask, Rose, how do you compare? How does Maria and your other child, how do you know they're not falling behind?
My kids are doing great, John. We have two boys who have graduated from online grade school, gone into traditional high school. One starts at the Milwaukee School of Engineering this week, and they're doing very well. They've been in advanced classes. Well, their test scores are extraordinarily high, and their confidence, their ownership of their lessons. That's one thing that I really like about this way of learning. The kids really buy into the fact that they're the learner, and they're in the driver's seat often with their decisions about their learning, and I like it that way.
And when they joined the conventional school, you found that they were ahead, not behind.
Certainly. My boys were both placed in advanced classes and have both done very well at one of the toughest high schools in our area.
Well, who's got the microphone here? Yes, in the back, yes.
Mr. Packard, this question is for you. Can you just elaborate on the structure a little bit more? Are multiple students tuned into a teacher at one time, or is it by individual time slots?
It's actually both. So the way it works is you generally can go through the curriculum on a self-paced manner. That, like we talked about, individualized, allowing more time. When you're struggling with an issue, you then can have a one-on-one session with your teacher to cover that issue. So the teachers become incredibly effective because they're focusing on the issue you're having problems with, and the other 30 kids in the class don't have to listen to your issue. We also, particularly at middle school and high school, have online discussion groups because we want kids to interact with other kids. It's an important part of education, having a collaborative, learning experience. So we'll do multiple students on a web session with a teacher also. So it's both, and the idea is to use the teaching resources effectively as opposed to, a very inefficient way of having him give a lecture at the pace that some kids can grasp, others can't, others are lost.
Yes, sir.
Our country is famous for its liberty, for its innovation, and for its university educations. But I think we're getting embarrassed by our lower level education. Looking forward, how do all of you see how we can use innovation to get us back to first place?
I mean, to me, innovation is the only thing that's going to do that. It's part of America. It's part of the American spirit. And interesting enough, the technology-based curriculum is very powerful. It engages kids. 100 years ago, it was, your choice was working on a farm in 100-degree heat or sitting in a classroom. Sitting in a classroom was pretty appealing. Now when your choice is playing Halo or some video game, it's not quite, and watching a chalk lecture just doesn't do it. We actually put our technology-based curriculum into classrooms, and we did it in Philadelphia and 7 places now, and we've seen anywhere from 10 to 40 points of gain in a school in math and science, doing nothing more than putting in our curriculum without changing the teachers or the faculty. And what happens is the kids become engaged. And there's 2 things that affect student learning: student engagement and teacher quality. And when you put this curriculum in a classroom, it gives the teachers what they need to teach and engages the kids. And we're seeing systematic results. We're 7 for 7.
And I think your Halo comparison is interesting. And then I watch my kid, it's a very cool game, and he's wearing a headphone. He's playing all these video games, but then I realize he's got 4 teammates. And some of them are in Japan and Russia, and they're talking to each other. And they're learning at a rate that has to be better than what goes on in many classrooms. We're out of time for now. I thank you all, Colin Hanna, Ron Packard, Rose Fernandez. If you'd like to join our studio audience, please visit our website, johnstossel.com, or send an email to stosseltix@foxbusiness.com. Thanks for watching.